Welcome everyone to our latest REV'IT digital mixer, co-hosted by the good folks at Motorcyclegear.com and our guest, renowned vehicle designer, custom bike builder, and all-around nice guy, Earle of Earle Motors. I am Juno Park, Urban Brand Manager at REV'IT USA, and your host for this evening. We have organized this digital event as part of our #StaySafe, #KeepDreaming series to put a little motorcycle color back in our worlds. And we are super grateful to have such a talented designer and industry personality like Alex here with us to share his creative process, riding experiences, and custom building advice. To the best of our knowledge, all members of the REV'IT family are healthy, both in the US and in our global headquarters in the Netherlands. We are grateful for our leadership teams who are guiding the company through this incredible place with this incredible grace. And we are especially grateful for both REV'IT and Motorcyclegear.com warehouse teams who have continued to work under strict safety measures and have allowed operations to continue as normal. If any of you are watching, we appreciate you and thank you for your work. We would also like to extend our thanks to our virtual co-hosts of the event, Motorcyclegear.com. I'll start by turning it over to Mike and Will at Motorcyclegear.com for an update of their life at their organization. Hey guys.
Hey everybody, we want to start by thanking everyone for joining us for this mixer. We're excited to hear from Earle and hear about his, learn more about his build, and we know you guys are too. First off, we're gonna let Will here talk a little bit more about what's going on here in our area.
Let me get in the frame here. Yeah, we just want to give everyone an update on what we're doing here at the shop and how everything has been going on around here. First of all, we've been in business here in Shallow, Texas for over 20 years now. So we weathered a storm or two, but this is all new territory for us for sure. We've decided to keep our showroom close to the public at this time because we ship all over the US into several countries, so we do not want to risk the health of our employees as well as our customers. But our team here has been working to keep up with orders, and we are still shipping out daily. A few of our suppliers have experienced some disruptions and delays, but overall everything has been going pretty smoothly, all things considered. We're fortunate enough to have great partners like REV'IT who are working with us to offer great gear deals like their We Have Got Your Back promotion, which runs through the end of the month, where any new REV'IT jackets purchased will have the corresponding C-Soft back protectors included free of charge. Along with all this, you can stay alert on deals like this on our Instagram, on our social medias. Our Instagram is official_motorcycle_gear. Our Twitter is motorcycle_gear. And you can find us on Facebook at Motorcyclegear.com. We're also uploading weekly spotlight videos and gear reviews to our YouTube channel, Motorcyclegear.com. So go check that out for more gear review videos down the road. And I guess we're going back to you.
Thanks, Will. Thanks a lot. Everything's going good over there as far as these crazy COVID times?
Yeah, I mean, as good as it can, really. I mean, no complaints here.
All right, stay safe, guys. Thanks.
Yes, sir.
So before I introduce Alex, I just want to say that REV'IT Urban makes it our goal to spotlight the people who are pushing motorcycle culture and bringing their creativity to life. Our guest tonight has not only done that for himself and his company, Earle Motors, he's been working hard to share his knowledge with the next generation of thinkers and designers at one of the most prestigious transportation design colleges in the world. Not only does he conceptualize and execute some of the most beautiful custom on and off-road motorcycles in the industry, he personally tests them on dirt tracks and out in the wilderness. Alex, thank you for joining us. How's it going? Alex, you there?
Hey, June, yeah, can you see me?
Yeah, you look great. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, yeah, it's the soft light. Yeah, thank you. It's great to see you. How are you? You're in Brooklyn.
Great. Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn, a bit of the epicenter stuff, you know, and life isn't as nutty, but there are moments where I feel like I'm in like a Black Mirror episode, totally like
yeah, sure,
fighting through the Twilight Zone and whatnot. But yeah, hanging in there. Where are you broadcasting in from?
I'm in Marina del Rey, yeah, Santa Monica, Venice area in California. So yeah, things here, it's always beautiful out there. It's pretty easy to get on your bicycle and head down to the beach. There's no one there. It's kind of an odd sensation, but otherwise it's really good out here. glad. I'm very fortunate to be working from home. Both of my jobs, my sort of normal gigs, I can do from home with a laptop. So it's really nice for me to spend some time with my family, actually.
That's fortunate. That's really nice to hear. Otherwise, nice to hear things are good in your world. Let's dive into what you're actually busy with professionally speaking. I know there was a bit of news out in the blogosphere recently regarding custom motorcycles and what you're doing education-wise. Can you get into that really quickly?
Yeah, of course. Gladly. In fact, I was posting some stuff on my Instagram today from that class, like some of the really nice work that was produced last term. It just wrapped up. I think it was like April 25th was the final for that class, and Ducati was involved. Oh, perfect. Yeah, thank you. Ducati was involved in this one officially. So they came to the school and did kind of a project kickoff. The assignment was basically to create proposals for the new scrambler, like let's say 10 to 15 years in advance. And so I started with, I think 13 or 14 students. It's always kind of fluctuating. There are a lot of international students there, so people are kind of coming and going, but we ended up with, I think about 10 really strong proposals in the end. I should mention also, like right around midterm, they actually sent one of their designers over, Jeremy Farrow, really talented young guy that I've known for many years now. He came over and did kind of a master class with all the students in person, which was really fantastic. It's always hard to break those guys away from their drafting tables or their, I guess their Wacom tablets now. I just dated myself there, but to get these guys to come over to California was like a really big deal. So they came up to Pasadena to the campus and had that interaction with the students. And so after 14 weeks, the students basically, you can kind of see some examples here of some of the early sketches. It just so happens this one that you're showing is the one that was selected as being the most sort of, it answered the topic the best as far as like what the future scrambler would be. So I was really pushing ergonomics, and I wasn't allowing anyone to just do kind of a crazy sci-fi blue sky proposal that didn't address true mechanical requirements of the way suspensions work, just like the basic swing arm pivot points and how shocks are driven, all these kinds of things, chain line, steering head, kind of general steering angle. Certainly wheel size for me is like a critical thing. It basically sets and determines the whole purpose of this bike, and certainly proportion. So all that kind of stuff was addressed in the class. And after 14 weeks, I should probably also add, of course, normally we do physical models, like each student builds their own data, and they 3D print about a 3rd scale model. So it's about, like, I don't know, half a meter long typically. And they paint them up on the campus. There's a really, really good shop at the school there. And that's normally the final result. But this time, right around week 8, kind of the critical time, midterm, COVID hit and everybody was sent home. So we had to pivot very quickly, start working on Zoom, just like we are right now, which I'm actually, interestingly, I'm kind of excited about this. I think this opens up a lot of opportunities to be even more effective in our work and like interact more often than we were before in person. Although the obvious other side of that coin is, like in this power sports class, I really like to take the students to look at bikes. Like this term, for example, before COVID, we went down to Suicide Machines shop in Long Beach, and Sean was there, and actually Aaron Boss was there as well, the fabricator from Roland Sands. He was there that night. Mm-hmm. So all my students got to meet him, and for me, this is like the huge reward. Well, one of the many rewards I would say from that class to me personally, because it was so great. I've got students in there, couple guys from China, South Korea. There's one gentleman from Mongolia, which that place has always kind of intrigued me. I've never been. I've always wanted to go, but to get him down into Sean Guardado's shop looking at flat track bikes and crazy Harley builds, for me, is really exciting. And the students always respond to that as well. So that's the kind of thing that is obviously impossible to do with Zoom, but it's exciting. So anyway, just to wrap that up, that last, the sketches that you were showing, that yellow scrambler, the images, that was the one that was selected, and Ducati actually extended an internship opportunity to that student. So he'll be going to the Ducati Design Center in Bologna. The date hasn't been set yet, obviously with the COVID, but it seems that, you know, he's online. He'll be working over there in their studio, which is a huge, I can't even express like how big that is.
Yeah, that's so awesome for a young person to have such a cool opportunity. And you built that power sports program from the ground up, right? At Art Center. It wasn't a pre-existing class. So that's pretty sick that one of your students in such a short time of starting that program got an internship working at the big boys in Bologna. So that's pretty rad. I was surprised too, because I've seen some, a local art and design college here in Brooklyn, Pratt Institute, also has like a much smaller motorcycle transportation design program than Art Center. But I was actually attended a final critique there, and their concepts were like over the moon, just like wheels not attached and absolutely no engineering thought. Rightly so, because I mean, designers aren't usually constrained by that from my understanding. But I saw that those sketches in that rendering, and I was really surprised at how pragmatic and how practical of a scrambler it looked. And also I'm a big nerd for super monos, so any single cylinder Ducati is rad in my book. But yeah, I can totally imagine the challenges you must be facing trying to teach a class completely digitally without being able to have real world examples to show. So thanks for sharing that. Getting more into personal with you and your background and your influences, what are your own early creative influences, and maybe share any source materials, either motorcycle or non-endemic, that you personally draw inspiration from?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you know, I'd say Star Wars. It was Star Wars. So I grew up in suburbs in Salt Lake City, living in the basement. You know, I wasn't exposed to a lot of stuff. I didn't see Porsches and Ducatis, certainly growing up. That wasn't part of my world. And I saw Star Wars. I remember as a kid buying the sketchbooks. Yeah, those Ralph McQuarrie and all those guys that were doing those original sketchbooks. I still have them actually right here from sixth grade, I think, when I got the first ones. And looking at those drawings and just the kind of the creativity that they represented, I have to say, like, I can trace it all kind of directly back to that. So I kind of started from there. And then it wasn't until many, many, many years later, when I was living in Denver, that I saw my first Ducati Monster. Actually, it was, yeah, that must have been like 1994. So I saw a yellow Monster that was just out in the wild being ridden by some guy at a bookstore. And that's when I kind of flipped that switch in my head. But I've always been riding bicycles since I can remember, like seriously, not just kind of BMX, you know, in the street in front of my house. Like, my father always had me out doing big road rides. And like one summer we rode down the whole coast of Oregon State, for example. For about 2 weeks. And so it was pretty hardcore. I was doing a lot of cycling, and that also, I think, funneled me into kind of my love of motorcycles, of course. And then I've always been into Jeeps and that sort of thing as well. And not necessarily like in the gearhead kind of like drop this engine in that and put 42s on it and all that kind of stuff and weld crazy bumpers up. It wasn't like that for me. It was way more like this sort of romantic image of these things. I still, you know, like, I like old CJ6s and stuff like that, like with Steelies and kind of really rugged, patinaed old workhorses. And so that had a big influence on everything I do too. I find most of what I design, if I have any opportunity to skew it in that direction, is kind of, well, as you can see with the desert sleds that I've worked on, even taking like a stock desert sled, but for me, it's not enough. Like, it's got to have an off-road wheel package and make it more rugged and more capable in the open. So I'd say those are kind of like the influences.
Mhm. I got to expand that for a second, but first, I have to remind people that there's two functions on the bottom of your Zoom screen. We've got a chat bubble, so you guys can say hello to your fellow attendees, have remarks for the panelists. But if you have questions for Alex specifically, there's a Q&A bubble button right there, and that lets us manage your questions so that we can queue them up for Alex to answer later. So please make sure you use those. Going back to what you said about your influences, every time I talk to a designer and I throw them that question, they always say, yeah, Industrial Light and Magic, so Star Wars vehicles for sure, and then like Tamiya models, like model kits. But I can't help noticing you've got an airplane background, and I know you mentioned also Daniel Simon right before we hopped on the call. So did you draw, and I know that some of your design cues and aesthetic stuff come from aviation and space. Can you expunge on that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I wanted to be a pilot originally. That was my first goal ever since I was, I don't know, 10 or 12. One of my uncles is a commercial pilot. And in fact, this is a little 6 scale. It's a vintage RC plane of a Piper Cub with some Alaska wheels on it. And so that stuff always spoke to me. And then I was actually taking aviation. I was taking a course to become a pilot in high school. And I had all my hours and everything. It was time for me to solo. And I went for my physical, and I couldn't pass the color blindness test all of a sudden when I was like 17. And I had no idea until then. So I was like, all of a sudden I had to change like my whole, life goal. I couldn't fly for the military with my color vision. So that's kind of when I started going more into like architecture, which is what I did in high school. And I actually have a degree in landscape architecture and city planning first that I did before I got into cars. But I was always drawing and sketching and kind of designing. And then, yeah, so aircraft.
I threw these references up on the screen just because I knew some of the stuff personally that you draw inspiration from, like Daniel Simon's concepts.
Yeah.
And
Daniel's a good friend, very good friend. In fact, that Lotus bike, I remember he called me many, many years ago over to his house here in Santa Monica, and he had a bead foam milled version of that you're looking at right there. It was just like all white bead foam, the whole thing, including the wheels and everything, with some kind of like wooden dowel sticking out for the handlebars. And he asked me to bring over my Monster. I had that old original M900, actually the one that I turned into the Tracker. Mm-hmm. I rode over there and we compared them outside his garage in the alley there. Mm-hmm. And kind of looked at them and
yeah, his concepts are nuts. And I mean, that whole futurist design stuff like Sid Mead and Blade Runner, and those are names that I usually hear a lot from designers. So there's definitely like a shared childhood experience that you and your colleagues all tend to mention. We've had you on a panel with Galuzzi and Hugo Eccles from Untitled, and Miguel Galuzzi is the original designer who penned the Ducati Monster amongst other beautiful motorcycles. But do you recall who this is that you said it was an inspiration in your interview? You might recognize. Yeah, Jack Northrop. For those of you who don't know what I'm referring to, we actually did an article about Alex and the Alaskan on REV'ITsport.com. You can check it out, and he did cite some amazing creations as inspirations from his background. So that's why I queued these pictures up. This is just an excuse for me to throw this stuff on the screen because I just think it's so cool. That Black Bomber is insane. I mean,
cool. Yeah.
And then
oh yeah, and Ola Stenegard was actually one of my classmates at Art Center. Like we were in the same classroom making models. I remember we did I think it was a Hyundai SUV back then that we modeled in 5th scale up there. And he's amazing. Like, I don't know how that guy, he's like the godfather of this whole scene. And I went to he was working at BMW before Indian, of course. And I went over there once to Munich, and he had this really amazing sort of barn shop that they had set up, and they were making all these crazy choppers with Harley motors and things. And he's just like a total Viking, that guy. like really the real deal. And I remember one day watching him ride to work on I think it was a GS 800 in Munich in like February. I mean, it was cold as hell. I don't know how. I mean, he's a Viking, so I guess that explains it. But yeah, he's a really cool guy. And in fact, I was really happy. One of the students from my power sports class last term, the previous term, he just got an internship at Indian, so he's out there right now as well. So I hope to get a lot more of these guys in the industry from the school, because in the past there was no real channel for them. They just kind of ended up there somehow. And now I'm trying to hopefully make it more purposeful, you know, a purposeful kind of route for them.
You mentioned the tracker a few times. Obviously you're a fan of Ducati. I'm a fan of Ducatis. And I think the first time I saw your work was at a hand-built show years and years ago. And it was this all carbon fiber thing. I was like, is this a Ducati flat track racer? Could you just talk about what the experience of going to a show for a builder is like? Because I know a lot of people listening probably have attended hand built or one show or big shows like that. Can you just briefly talk about that?
Sure. I mean, kind of, you're probably, I don't know if you're referring to the first time I went to the hand built, I had two trackers. It was the same bike, but one had 17-inch wheels and one had 19. So there was a red one and a white one. I took them down as like a little team. And that was really my first experience with any of that world. And really my first time I dipped my toe into the whole motorcycle culture, as it were. And I have to say, back then it was a crazy thing. Like, I didn't have any awareness of these shows before. I just started doing that tracker. That tracker actually took me something like 10 years to get it from paper to actually build it, because it was more, I mean, oh yeah, perfect, thank you. I made that little model first. Again, I went to Art Center myself. You know, obviously I teach there now, but I was a student there back in '98. And this is how I was trained, to just like make scale models, work out the proportion, to get all this stuff done, and work the surfaces out in scale before you go big. And so I made this model and kind of sat on my shelf for 8 years or something, a long time. And then it wasn't until much later that I decided to actually go for it with this monster that I had, which was like my daily rider, that bike right there. And it took a long time to make these parts, and we tooled everything. In fact, funny thing is, like the base for this, the master that was milled on a 5-axis mill out in Camarillo was done in the same foam from one of those Daniel like Tron bikes by this other friend of ours that has a company called Wild Factory, Adam. And so he milled this master for us that we made molds off of. And the first two were carbon fiber. This is actually the prototype that was done in fiberglass with an aluminum tank underneath it. So you can see there's that like aluminum ring on the top that's bonded into the top. And then there's actually an aluminum gas tank under there. So, but the two nice ones that you saw at the hand-built show, those were full carbon monocoque. And those both sold actually to museums, funnily enough, both of them, one on the East Coast and one in Dallas. And this was kind of my first attempt at doing something like this. And yeah, I mean, going to the shows with these things was really crazy. It was like, I think the first one show had already happened before I got this bike built. And then all of a sudden I saw it in a print magazine somewhere, a couple of these bikes. It looked like there were only like 15 or 20 bikes there in the photos. I couldn't really tell, but I was so excited when I found out about that. And I was like, I have to get into the show. And it was really hard. Like, it was kind of like invitation only, and there were all kinds of people and emails and things I had to do to get in there.
Yeah,
and
for
then,
people watching, this is Alex at the one show. I think we had Brandon LaJoy do a portrait of you, putting that fender on like the 11th hour, I believe, right? You just like were carrying that fender, ran upstairs to install it.
Yeah, she flew that up. Like, I was already there with the bike and it was already on the floor with no fender. And then everyone's like, you got to have a fender. And I'm like, I built one, but it's just not done. And so I had her bring it in her suitcase and she flew that up and I bolted it on. But you can see that's the piece that I made. That's not the real one was carbon fiber that I had laid up by my friend Ben up in Oxnard. But this one was literally the one I bondoed together. So that's why it's all gray in primer. But yeah, there's Miguel, and Hugo, of course. But and Miguel works for Piaggio, or he is the design director of Piaggio. He is in Pasadena, very close. He's like maybe 2 miles away from Art Center. So he drops in quite a bit on the power sports class. And he's amazing. Like if you want, yeah, he knows everything. That guy,
Yeah.
he knows more than anyone I know. So
It's so crazy too, for the guy that designed the original monster and has been around as a stalwart of the industry. You see him at a show like one show, and he's like a 7-year-old kid. He's like running around being like, "Oh, do you see this? Oh, do you see this?" He gets so excited about it. It's amazing to see, you know?
yeah, no, he's a champion for sure.
Also in the photo is Mark Atkinson, who made that crazy BMW Shark Land Speed Racer. Very talented machinist, and of course, metal worker supreme Craig Rodsmith.
Yeah,
with his arm over
Yeah.
you. That was a great event.
I think that was the first time I met those two, was that like in this photo pretty much. So, but since I've kind of come to know them a lot better, and yeah, there it is at the one show again. That's this guy on the left was actually one of my roommates when I was at Art Center as a student. His name's Thomas Bell.
Random.
He's like a design director up at Nike now in Portland.
Oh, sick. Going back to that tracker in the photo, it seems very performance oriented, but the competition influence and all the aesthetic and performance and functional pieces, were they inspired mostly from flat track racing itself, which is in itself very American, or did you find influence for that bike elsewhere?
Well, it's kind of ironic. It's actually good to see this with the 17-inch wheels on it in this photo. And I remember when I first built it, I designed it as a pure, what I considered a pure flat track bike it had to have 19-inch wheels front and rear. Absolutely, like no question. And even so many people are like, well, there are tires that look like flat track, but they're 17-inch, or there's a front wheel that's 18-inch or something that kind of looks flat track. I'm like, no, it's got to be 19, like front and rear. And that's the proportion that means flat track. And so I was really like crazy about it, that it had to be 19s. And then I was looking at flat track 100% as my inspiration. I wanted that horizontal line across the top, like a very low tank, big old 19s, big wide vortex Murph bend bars on it. It's really fun to ride. It fits, I'm like 6'4", and I needed a taller bike. You can imagine like a monster seat height is way too low for me, and it's a very petite bike. So I raised the seat height by about 3.5 inches on that with the 19s. And I rode it like that for many, many years. And I love it. I still love it that way. That's how it is right now on display. And then years later, I don't even remember what happened exactly. I kind of relented, and I said, like, what if I put the 17s back on it, make it kind of like an early 80s super bike, and see what that looks like. So I literally just threw the monster wheels back on it, those old 3-spoke monster wheels. And I started taking it to these vintage track days out at Willow Springs that Brady Walker runs, which are pretty amazing. And the bike, the bike's got like 70 horsepower. I think AMS in Dallas dynoed it when it was down there once at like 70 horsepower. And so it's not super fast. And I weigh a lot. So I go to the track and it's a struggle, but I love it so much. It's so fun to try to make it go as fast as it can go.
Yeah.
And
Speaking of fun and loving it, you've got a cool little project to share with that bike and a truck that you have as well, right? Didn't someone reach out to you for that?
Yeah, in fact, so it's kind of again like shall I do the screen share?
Yeah, show it. Yeah, exactly.
Let's see if I can. There we go. It's probably not the first thing that's going to come up, I think, because of the. Let's see if I can manage this. Hang on, that didn't take. Let me try it one more time. Oh, hang on. I think I closed the window. Just give me a second.
Sure.
I can talk over it while I'm doing
talk
that.
over it, because I think the big reveal would be, go ahead.
Yeah, there we go.
So, and people reached out to you to make this project, right? It wasn't something that you were like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't even know how to shop something like this around. Are you screen sharing it? Can you screen share it,
I'm
or
hitting
you want to
that
just
right
talk about it?
now. There we go. That's going. It should be.
Yeah,
Okay,
maybe
it
hit
says,
the maximize. Yeah.
okay, is that working?
Yeah. Looks great.
Okay.
What's the thing behind? What's that thing with
Yeah,
four wheels behind the bike?
that's right. So that's actually my old Jeepster Commando. It's a 67 Commando that I've owned for probably 20 years now. That I bought. I found it on the street here in Santa Monica, just parked in front of a condominium, and I left a card on it and ended up buying it from the guy. It was not in the best running condition, but it was 100% original. Like everything, it only had 18,000 miles on it at the time. And so I picked that thing up and I've kind of had it ever since. And then it just kind of became my little shop truck in addition to all the other things I do with it. It's been to Moab many times, and it's really impressive how capable it is for its age. I was blown away what it will do. But I was using that a lot to tow the tracker around and do all kinds of general shop duties with that. And then as it turns out, somewhere along that time, a couple of my art center buddies that had interned with us at my day job, they asked me to bring this setup just like this, actually with the trailer, to Hot Wheels where they work over at Mattel here in El Segundo, which is right around the corner from my house here. And anyway, I took it over to the show. They had kind of like a big event, and they parked 3 or 4 of us in this kind of particular area. And then they came to me afterwards and said, like, yeah, we'd like to make a Hot Wheels out of these 3, and yours is one of them, new for 2019. And so I was, of course, like elated over that, and gave them the data for the bike, for the body. And they built this little thing at 1/64th scale. They put it across the back
Yeah,
side.
photos.
I do, yeah. So here's another shot of that out in Ventura. And then here you go. This is what the result was. So this came out in 2019. I think I found the first at a Target in like December of that year. And but yeah, it's licensed. They've got all my little graphics on it. And so this is the original color. They've since come out with a green one that's just like it. And then another, like a special edition one that has entirely different graphics on it now, but it's out in 3 different versions. And that was a real experience for me too. I had no expectations. I didn't know what that meant, but there's like a whole subculture there that's massive and rabid. Like they love this stuff so much, and just to see what they do with it, they're customizing them and making all kinds of different versions of them. And they come out, each color was like 300,000 units. So they made 300,000 of this one, 300,000.
Oh, so there's like almost
green,
a million, so there's almost like a million Earl Motors Hot Wheels trucks and bikes flying around the United States, or the world.
Everywhere. That's the trippy thing for me. So in fact, my cousin in Panama just sent me a photo of one that he found in some grocery store in Panama in Central America. And then I'll see them pop up in, literally everywhere that there's a shop, there are these on the planet. So that's been really fun. This is one of the coolest things I've participated in. Although I did very little.
That's the best kind of project where you do very little and you get all the credit and you look super cool. That's like the ideal project.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's fun. It's definitely fun. Like, as a calling card, I kind of hand these things out quite a bit. I don't have a business card, but I've got these with the Earl Motors script on the side.
That's probably the best business card I've ever seen in my life. Thank you for sharing that. That's so rad. I'm glad you got those photos up to share. But I think a lot of people are here, and because the notoriety you have from most bike culture fans is the Alaskan. And I know that's a variation or your latest version of the Alaskan that's on the screen right there. But I'm gonna stop your screen share for a moment and ask you about your creative process for the Alaskan. What specific motivations or purposes did you build that, influences, creative process, but specifically maybe any challenges that stood out in making that bike and developing the Alaskan?
Sure. Well, for me, it's always ideally, you know, typically if you get design briefs or normally if you're working for a big company, they always come to you and they say, we need you to work on project X. And so many of the parameters are already given to you, or you know, like what the previous one was like. Therefore, you know about 85% of what the next one's going to be like. But for me, when I'm left to my own, much as I did with the tracker, and I kind of invented this whole storyline around the lore of the flat track racer in Ventura out there, you know, just doing it for the fun of racing, or in this case, the Alaskan. That's why I had the name and everything, obviously, for it before the bike was ever started. And I wanted to reinterpret the regular desert sled in a way that would make it really capable for a really, really long journey. And I guess one of the major, I'd been to Alaska with another buddy of mine, I think 2 years prior to this trip that I took with this bike. And I knew that there were places where there were like 250 miles of no fuel heading up to Dead Horse. So I knew I had to carry a lot of fuel. And then I knew it had to be very robust and rugged, because if you drop a bike out there, there's no, you know, rushing over to the O'Reillys or whatever to repair that thing. So there were certain parameters that were dictated by the kind of program of trying to go to Alaska. I knew I wanted to be off-road as much as humanly possible. First time I went, I felt like I rode pretty much every paved road in Alaska, every highway, and it's not that appealing to me just to go straight. And again, this speaks to my love of Jeeps and off-road and vintage type stuff. So I wanted to be out there kind of self-sustaining. And so those are the kind of things that dictated what this design would be like. So I ended up, you showed some really nice pictures of the beginning of like forming everything by hand out of Bondo and foam. And so I could make sure that ergonomically the thing fits like incredibly well, like a tailored suit basically. And then it was just a matter of getting the desired capacity with the gas tanks, which was really crazy because I had a goal of 8 gallons. But you can see me sanding them. I had no idea what that volume was until I actually had the prototype parts made in fiberglass. And I put them in my kitchen sink here and filled them with water to measure the capacity, because I didn't do any of this digitally. And it turned out like, I think the main tank is 5.9 gallons and the rear was 2.1. So it was like precisely 8 gallons, like on the dot, which was just like by chance. But
you can't say that. You got to say you planned it specifically. You did all the math.
My hands knew. Yeah, my hands could tell that volume. But no, it was really fun. I did this very quickly in a shop. This was actually a barber shop. You can see by the subway tile and the mirrors, and those are sinks. You see where the exhausts are right behind my head? Those are those head sinks where you put your neck like guillotine style in there. I put a.
See, you're wearing an N95 mask. It's. I hope you save some of those. Those are very valuable nowadays. You could probably build.
You're right
3
on the
more
money
custom
with those,
bikes.
actually. My wife got me a box of those to do this sanding, which I didn't use them all, and that's literally what I'm using right now for my COVID masks. Is that remainder of that box? But
so you're forming all that bodywork, the tank, the tanks plural, I suppose, right then and there by like you said, you didn't do the CAD, you didn't do the digital, you're just doing it all by eye and by feel.
Right. The first one, the tracker,
actually.
for example, was all built. Actually, the data was built by my friend Mark Smith, who's this hyper talented car designer, like really good with surfacing, and he built the data for that first one. But it's very time consuming and it's expensive to mill, obviously. So this one, another buddy of mine donated the shop space there in this barber shop. Basically, I only had 2 months. So he's like, you got 2 months, go. Like, so I got this bike very quickly. I actually purchased a press bike from Ducati USA to use as the base. And I just started forming this thing right over the bike by hand. Like that was the most expedient way to get this done. And also, I have to say, like, I feel like the ergonomics are off the charts as a result. Like they fit my inseam and everything so perfectly. I wouldn't want to do it any other way given the choice. So yeah, these are pictures of the actual parts when I finally got them back, and they've got this obvious NASA theme, which I put together after having watched the well, the Martian, I guess, with yeah. So
yeah, I'm going to go back to the Martian inspired photos in a second, but just to nerd out for a second with you, did you hear that NASA brought back the worm logo? That they started using it again? I think that's so cool.
Yeah, I did see that actually.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
and yeah, going back to these this photo shoot that I shared before, just like, yeah, crazy, otherworldly. Who was the photographer that did this with you?
Chris Tomes. Yeah, I was just going to mention that actually. Christopher Tomes, at Chris Tomes on Instagram. He's taken most of the photos from Alaska. Boyd Janes also did a whole bunch. There were like 2 in series. But Chris made the video for this. And these pictures are actually before we went in, they were taken in Big Bear. And we were obviously going for this Martian look. And REV'IT was gracious enough to provide us with that suit actually, which I remember I sent June a picture of the spacesuit from the Martian and said, look, this is the look I'm going for. I wanted to kind of curate this whole look. And that suit is perfect. I mean, it looks exactly like what you see on the movie. And I thought it fit the whole exploration theme of the bike and going to Alaska with this very well. And it was interesting because I think I rode the bike on this day for maybe an hour or 2. And then we immediately put it on a van and shipped it up with my friend Dan Trody, drove it all the way up to Alaska. And then we immediately took it off road for 2 weeks. And I had no idea if the tank was going to hold up. I was carrying 8 gallons of fuel, quite a bit. And yeah, that's the carbon fender that I was mentioning before. That's the real one. And you can also see the Swingarm Extenders on this bike. Now, not so much in this picture, but you can see the wheelbase is what I consider like a perfect length now. I think it's like 62 inches with the extenders. But this allows you to put the 18-inch wheel on the back, which is in combination with the 21-inch wheel, what makes all of this possible. If you don't, yeah, there's a great picture.
There it is. Yeah. We were talking, Ducati campaigned a pair of scramblers on the Mint? Using
the Mint
those.
100, in Prim. I went up to that, and that was an amazing experience too, to see that after all this development and see those guys do so well. And it was Jordan Graham from, I think he lives in Ventura or Santa Barbara, I think. And Alexander Smith, he was second place on one of these bikes, which for me was a huge, I mean, I'm such a fan of his father, Malcolm, to have him ride the bike alone was really a treat. But just to meet him, he's such a nice guy and really personable and humble and amazing rider, obviously. So that was really fun for me. Huge. These are the perks, like, I guess we all know there's not a lot of money or anything to be made doing any of this, but some of these little adventures are what it's all about. It's really,
yeah. Speaking of adventures, great tee up for the segue. What was it actually riding and testing the bike in Alaska? And you didn't go by yourself, right? You went with a team of people.
Yeah, in fact, at first I thought I was going to have a hard time enlisting anybody to go up there, but in the end there were like 6 of us all in. And yeah, Dan Trody I mentioned, Christopher Tomes, Boyd Janes, a friend of ours named Roby Michelin from Ventura, and Nathan Verdugo came, which was pretty awesome. Anytime you see a picture of this bike doing something really cool, it's Nathan doing it. He's wearing my outfit, but he's like airborne. So these are all pictures of me, but Nathan, yeah, he made it look cool for sure. But it was an amazing.
Any harrowing moments? I know you were going to say it was a fairly easy trip, but I know there's a particular one that I find, I was gobsmacked when you told me.
Yeah, I mean, well, there were a couple actually. There were a couple times we had like little incidents and like bike on bike action sometimes, and just kind of getting a little too exuberant up there maybe in the free spaces in Alaska. But yeah, I think probably what you're referring to is the the very first day that we had been riding for, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours, and we ended up on this glacier, and there was a really big lake with a glare ice bottomed lake. And admittedly, earlier in the day, I was goofing around and kind of being a clown and doing dumb things. But later on, I was mellow. I was walking next to that lake, minding my business with my helmet in my hand, fully clothed. And next thing I know, I slipped into the lake on this glare ice and started sinking like pretty quickly. I could feel, I had those absolutely waterproof REV'IT boots on, but when they filled up with water, I could feel them fill up with water and start to anchor, pull me down like an anchor. And yeah, I honestly thought I was going to drown there for a few seconds. That was pretty frightening, but I managed to claw my way out after pathetically crying out for my friends to come help me, they were too far away to help. They could hear me, but they were too far to give me any assistance. And I kind of, I managed to lob my helmet up onto the beach, and then after a few terrifying seconds, I clawed my way out. But yeah, that was kind of exciting, I guess.
Well, yeah, those REV'IT expedition boots are super waterproof, but don't go diving in them.
Yeah,
because that
don't
waterproof
recommend
works backwards. Yeah, they fill up like balloons. And take it from Alex Earle.
That's right.
Well, Alex, thanks
You're
for
welcome.
sharing those experiences with us. We're gonna go into some Q&A. Our attendees have asked some questions from an awesome name, Glass Taco Rage asks, "Hey Alex, do you have a favorite build that you have done?"
That I have done. Actually, that for sure, it's this Desert Raider, the last one, and it's the same bike. It's the Alaskan, but it's been kind of reimagined as a more focused tool. It doesn't have all the panniers and things like that. It still has the big range and the off-road capability and the kind of girth to. That's the thing. I mean, you could definitely go buy a 501 or a KTM or something much smaller, like a proper little 250-pound dirt bike. But there are certain times when I like this larger kind of bike with some presence, especially when you're out on the highway or doing really high speeds, like on dry lake beds or in silt or any of those things. I prefer this. But right now, that's definitely my favorite one. And we're going to actually be doing another video with that bike as soon as we can kind of get out of town and get all this quarantine behind us. So you'll see more from that, but that's definitely my favorite one. And I would add, I'm just beginning a new one, which is exactly my old tracker body on a Monster, but I'm going to use an S4 RS with a Superbike motor and 160 horsepower and 17s and make it like a purpose-built, super lightweight track bike. So I think that'll probably end up being my favorite once it's done.
That sounds awesome. You mentioned earlier, someone anonymous asks the names of the museum in Dallas that your bike is in.
Sure, it's the Haas Museum in Dallas. I think most people are aware of that by now. Bobby has an incredible collection down there, and he actually bought raw carbon body, that same tracker body, that monocoque, which is kind of like, in its day when it came out, it was kind of an unusual thing. You didn't see too many like that. They were all one piece. So that's hanging up there just as kind of a piece of sculpture in their museum as well, which I'm super proud of, because there's tons of stuff in there. Like Max Hazen probably has, I don't know, 7 or 8 bikes there, and there's some really amazing stuff.
Yeah, Craig Rodsmith has a few bikes at that Bobby Haas Museum.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So if you're in Dallas, go check them out. We got another question about your Hot Wheels. Where can we find them? Asked Anonymous. An actual retailer or a Hot Wheels website? You mentioned Target before, right?
Yeah, that's where I saw the first one. But I'll tell you, I would highly recommend don't buy them on eBay or something. You can get, you're gonna have to look, but I still see them at Ralph's and Vons and Walmart. Like if you dig through those huge bins, they're in there. And for me, anytime I have an extra 15 minutes and I see a Walmart or something, I'll go in and look for them still. It's kind of like a fun Easter egg hunt for me.
That's so sick, Alex. It's like the motorcycle builder. It's like the bike builder equivalent of having like an action figure made of you. I think it's so rad that you had not just the bike, but the Defender too. That's so cool.
It's really fun. Yeah.
And about your personal riding style, Jose asks something like the Street Tracker versus the Alaskan, which are both badass bikes. Torn between the two, do you gravitate personally towards one riding style over the other, whereas like flat track or road racing or adventure riding or dirt biking and enduro and stuff like that?
I definitely like dirt biking is my thing. And I'm not a super aggressive rider. I'm just like I'd say, I mean, I've got a lot of experience, but I'm not like really pushing that hard. So I really like to get to the desert and just ride as long as I can, spend a day or two out there and camp and ride from camp and just always be on the bike. I always have my boots on and just go off like that. I do have a track bike as well, which I used to do a lot, like several days a year, which is really fun. It's a very different thing. It just allows me to concentrate only on riding the bike, and it kind of shuts everything else out. So for me, it's like a really nice kind of Zen experience on the track, but it's frightening. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's like a terrifying experience. So I just love to be on the dirt bike. I really like this, as I said, the Desert Raider is a lot of fun, and but it's heavy. And so sometimes I like to just take out the old plastic Husqvarna and have no worries about anything basically. And that's kind of what I love.
Awesome. One or two last questions. Renee asks, where did your travels through Alaska take you? Or were there any specific points of interest, or maybe harp on what your favorite destination was? Did you make it to like Prudhoe Bay or whereabouts in Alaska?
With the trip that we did with the group, we didn't go to Prudhoe Bay. I would say my point was not to be on highways. Like I really wanted to be off-road. Like ideally I would have just been like on single track the whole time, and which we didn't achieve. You know, I have to say we didn't achieve that, but we were definitely on mining roads. And it's easy for me to tell you my absolute favorite place was called Petersville Mining Road. And it's the south entrance to the Denali National Park, basically. And it's all, I mean, it's not paved or anything. It's like really rugged, 2-track, crossing a river a lot. There's so much snow melt that you're constantly in this water of various depths. And we rode it up to the point basically where the snowpack in the summer was still there so deep that we just couldn't go any further. You could see Denali, the mountain peak from where we were from the south. It was really spectacular. But that's where I really felt like there's no one around us, and you could just do anything you wanted with the bikes. And in that time of the year, of course, it's like there's enough daylight to ride with pretty much the whole 24 hours a day. So you could drink beer until 3 in, and then it's still light, and it's really strange, but you can get on the bike and just do anything you'd like. And yeah, it's Petersville Mining Road was my favorite.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've never been up there, but I've always seen some fantastic shots and experience and ride reports of Alaska. So it's definitely on my bucket list. We have a bunch of technical questions, but I feel like we should move on to the next part of the segment. If you do want to address specific bike questions, I would highly encourage you to visit Alex's Instagram page. It's at Earle Motors, right, Alex? I'm getting that right?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. With an E, EARLE, Motors.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've got a few questions regarding the weight of the Alaskan and suspension mods and stuff. So yeah, shoot him a DM. If you guys have questions to Will and Mike at Motorcyclegear.com, feel free to contact them via their website, Motorcyclegear.com, or their Instagram, official_motorcycle_gear. So thanks, guys. And before we close the event, don't go anywhere. We've got this awesome, fun game show element to it with prizes. We'll be giving away, well, actually, Motorcyclegear.com is generous enough to give away a REV'IT Eclipse jacket. And we'll be also giving a runner-up prize of a pair of gloves. And here to take us through this really fun segment is my colleague, senior brand manager here at REV'IT USA, Tracy Motes. Tracy, you there? You're muted, Tracy.
Hi, everybody. I'm like the Vanna White of the evening. So we play a game called How Well Do You Know Alex Earle? And Alex is already nervous. He does not know what questions we have chosen. What I would recommend is that everybody who's watching this on your computer, get your phone out. It's a game where you need to be looking at the computer, but you play it with your phone. I'm going to screen share. Just give me one little minute to pull this up. And as my computer is loading here.
And while Tracy's working on that, I would be remiss if I didn't plug the suit that Alex was wearing in the Martian shoot, as well as his Alaska trip. So in Alaska, that all black getup is actually a Gore-Tex piece called the Trench GTX, paired with our Globe pants. And the Martian, I believe, was the Poseidon 2 GTX. Yeah, and that was a funny, interesting story that Alex told about his Matt Damon aspirations. So Tracy, we ready yet? We're getting there?
Working through a little bit of technical difficulty. It looks like the site may be having an issue. Hang with us for just another second.
Give it a shot.
Try this again. We're getting that infamous swirling blue circle. In the meantime, I will just remind everybody, as was mentioned earlier by Motorcyclegear.com, we currently do have a promo running through the entire month of May, where you receive a free Seasoft back protector with the purchase of any jacket. So anybody who's on the fence, maybe needs a new summer jacket, now would be a great time to go and shop their site. Again, it's just motorcyclegear.com. Very easy, and it looks like we've got some action here. It's just moving very slowly. Okay, let's give this a try. So everybody, if you can navigate to kahoot.it on your phones and then enter this game pin. And as we see names start to populate, we'll get going. Danger is in the house here. Somebody is ready. Someone is ready to play.
Tracy, you may want to turn your camera off. That might be causing the lag on your game show window.
Okay, I'm going invisible here. Okay, REM, welcome to the show. J Racing, Victor, Hot Wheels fan, Father Ribs. There's some definitely creativity. And I just want to add that Motorcyclegear.com has very generously agreed to give the winner of this game a brand new REV'IT Eclipse jacket. And we will be not quite matching, but at least coming in as a second to their generosity with a pair of gloves for the runner-up. So this is for real, gang. There are prizes involved. Okay, we'll wait a few more seconds. Espresso Ant is in, thank goodness. We were wondering where you were. 12 players. Last few moments to join up. Again, it's kahoot.it and then the game pin that you see on the screen. And I'm just gonna give it, oh, there he is, Glass Taco Rage.
That was definitely who we were waiting for.
Okay, so I think we can go ahead and start. How well do you know Alex Earle? So question 1 of 7, what movie was a trigger behind Alex's Ducati Alaskan? Was it 2001, A Space Odyssey, Interstellar, The Martian, or Ad Astra? Now, I actually didn't know that this was going to be brought up during the talk. So, 10 of you paid attention. Well done. Well done. Looks like we've got BJK on top, followed by Espresso Ant. Now, something you may have noticed there in that first round, speed counts. So next question, get ready to ring in as soon as you know the answer. Question 2, what is the engine size of the 2017 Ducati Desert Sled on which the Alaskan is based? Is it 799, 1099, 901, or 803? People answering very quickly. I feel like this is going to be a very competitive game. 803 indeed. Nobody thought it was 1099. And everything has changed. Father Ribs is in the lead. The Undertaker is in second. Nice job, Father Ribs. On to the next question. How many gallons of fuel does the Alaskan's hand-formed fuel tank? We're referring to the front tank here. Front tank, everybody. Few are still thinking about it. 6 gallons. I think it was the exact figure was 5.9, and then there's an additional 2 in the back. BJK came back, but Victor is on fire. Watch out, BJK, Victor is on your tail. What REV'IT jacket is Alex Earle wearing in this photo? Is it the Ridge GTX, the Trench GTX, the Poseidon GTX, or the Dominator GTX? 6 seconds. Few people on the fence here. And it was the Trench GTX. At a different moment, Alex has also worn the Poseidon, just a slightly different suit from our range. BJK still on top. Victor didn't quite catch, but REM has moved into third. Here we go. Alex Earle's design hero is famed aerospace engineer Burt Rutan. Which of these was he responsible for creating? Spaceship One, Skylon, Convair, F-106 Delta Dart, or the Concorde? I may have really screwed up the pronunciation on some of these. And it was Spaceship One. Oh, this could be the, looks like we had a wide spread of answers here. This could be a determining factor. Victor has moved into the lead. BJK, it's anyone's for the taking. Espresso Ant is right up there in third. Question 6 of 7. What is the name of Alex's daughter born on his own birthday in 2019? Is it Aaliyah, Alma, Anna, or did he just name her Motorcycle? People are thinking.
Tough one.
Tough one. I really appreciate the 3 people who think your daughter is named Motorcycle, Alex. And I'm happy to report her name is actually Alma. Maybe for your second child, you can consider this.
That is her middle name.
Alma Motorcycle.
Earl, yeah.
Oh, out of nowhere, Victor. Victor takes the lead. Followed by Dukeman, BJK, Espresso Ant, and REM. Anything can happen in these games. Last question. How many motorcycles does Alex have inside his apartment right now? 1, 2, 3, or 4? I think there's one more to weigh in. Oh, maybe not. Somebody's opted out of this last question. Alex has 4 motorcycles inside of his home at this very moment. And he told us earlier that he usually has an extra 2.
Very good.
So in 3rd place, BJK. 2nd place and the winner of a pair of REV'IT gloves is Duke Man. 1st place, Victor.
Wow.
Victor and Duke Man, however we're pronouncing this, can you please chat us your information so that we can email you how to redeem your prizes? Right now, chat us your info, your email address, and we will get back to you on how to redeem your prizes. Congrats, guys. And June, I'll turn it back to you.
Thanks, Tracy. That was awesome. I, for one, thought that your daughter's name was Motorcycle, but I'm sorely mistaken. But regardless, thank you for taking the time out to do this for us. It was really interesting and insightful. And of course, thank you very much to Mike and Will over at Motorcyclegear.com. Very generous of you. Congrats to Victor for winning the jacket they graciously donated to Victor. And for Duke Man, you're not on the attendee list, so feel free to shoot us a chat or find us on, find us on Instagram if we don't get to you, at REV'IT_urban to claim your glove prize. Thank you, everyone. Everyone stay safe. And this has been really fun. Thank you. Good night, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Signing off.
Cool. Bye-bye.
See you later.
Cheers.